So today I saw an interesting clip on Twitter, right? There's this video clip of Jermell Charlo speaking about how the boxing legends of like the 80s and 90s and even late 70s, those boxing legends really shun today's talent in the sport. A lot of the boxing legends of the 80s and 90s and even late 70s don't embrace the new crop of talent in the sport. And that's a problem. That's not acceptable. That's not cool. I don't care how much it's a lot of the old head nostalgia and the old head back in my day talk to relive the glory years of the sport. When the legends do that and talk down on the crop of talent and act like they ain't shit, that does a huge disservice to the sport of boxing. Like, I've been a boxing fan for a very, very long time. I was raised watching the sport by my uncles. And me being an avid watcher of the sport, I've seen a lot of boxing legends when they get asked about, today's crop of talent, when they get asked about, hey, who would you love to fight in today's boxing crowd? Who would you love to fight of the boxers of today's generation? A lot of them respond with answers that really is like demeaning towards the boxers today. They act like the boxers they reply like, oh, ain't nobody really out here making no noise. These boys ain't really nothing today. Back in my day, we was fighting. These boys ain't doing no fighting for real. They ain't out here doing nothing. They really ain't about nothing. These boys out here ain't really doing nothing worthwhile. And they say stuff like that. These boys ain't really nothing. They ain't good today. They ain't really that good. They say things like that. And my question to those boxing legends is, how do you expect the sport of boxing to grow, to maintain, to stay alive and relevant when you do those things? How do you expect it to survive, especially with UFC being so popular now? How do you expect boxing to survive when you have the boxing legends talking like that? How is the common person in the street going to watch a boxing match when the legends are talking like the boxers today ain't shit? If the legends of today if the legends of the 80s and 90s don't endorse the new fighters, boxing will struggle to survive. And I would hate that for a sport that I grew up loving, such a beautiful sport, like a warrior sport that is exciting to watch. I would hate for boxing to just be an afterthought at some point. But when you got guys like Mike Tyson, guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, don't really, and Mike Tyson is coming around now with giving props to certain guys. But I saw when Mike Tyson, when Deontay Wilder was first coming up in the ranks. And you can hate Deontay Wilder all you want to or dislike him. But it's the fact that this is what Mike Tyson said. When Deontay Wilder was knocking guys out, they asked Mike Tyson about Deontay Wilder's KO streak, his knockout streak. And Mike Tyson responded by saying, anybody can knock somebody out. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. My son can knock somebody out. My little son, he can knock somebody out too. Anybody can do that. That's nothing. Anybody can just knock somebody out. I'm like, Mike Tyson, why the hell would you do that? That's disrespectful to Deontay Wilder. Regardless if you like his fighting approach, regardless if you don't like his mechanics or bravado or whatever, to act as if a boxing champion, anybody can go in that ring and knock anybody out, including your son, that's disrespectful. You comparing him to a child. Like, nobody is going to watch boxing when you're saying that about a heavyweight champion. Nobody is going to want to tune into the sport because Iron Mike Tyson, who got all the clout in the world, is talking like the heavyweight champion ain't shit and anything he did is irrelevant. It's obsolete. It's erased. It's nothing. How do you expect for the young crowd, a common person, to get into boxing? How do you do that? You can't expect a young person to get into boxing when you got Mike Tyson talking like that about the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, regardless if you like his mechanics or anything like that. Mike Tyson could have simply said, you know what? Hey, Deontay Wilder's knocking out guys. That's a cool thing to do. We're gonna see we'll see how he can press forward going forward. We'll see if he can continue that. You know what I'm saying? It will be interesting to see if Deontay can continue that. That's a good job on his part. We'll see if he can continue that going forward, man. He can say I'm interested to see if he can continue that. But to act like, that ain't nothing that he doing and anybody can knock anybody out and your son can do that and it's nothing, like your child can do what he's doing. First, Mike, no, your son can't. Because if he could, he'd be in that boxing ring. But he's not in that boxing ring because he'd get his head knocked clean off his shoulders. You know what I mean? But when you got people doing stuff like that, it makes people don't want to watch the sport at all. I'm going to be real with y'all. In my age bracket, I'm 27 years old. Do you know most people in my age bracket don't know who the hell any of the boxers of today are. Only person they know is Floyd Mayweather and maybe Manny Pacquiao. They don't know who Terrence Bud Crawford is. They don't know who Errol Spence is. They don't know who Sean Porter is. They don't know who Teofimo Lopez is. They don't know who Vasily Lomachenko is. They don't know who any of these guys are. They don't know none of them. They don't know the Charlo twins. They don't know none of them. All they know is Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, and Floyd Mayweather. And a part of the reason why that is because the boxing legends of yesteryear or yesterday, they don't want to endorse any new talent at all. They act like they're above them. They act like and it's, again, of course, you all are legends. So yes, you are, in a sense, you're elevated on a pedestal. But unless these young brothers are disrespecting you, why you can't say good words about them, right? You know what I mean? Mike Tyson, even after he said that about Deontay Wilder, on his podcast, and Mike Tyson coming around now because he's talking to the likes of Gervonta Davis and other young guys or whatever. But even Mike Tyson had to tell Sugar Ray Leonard, hey, you got to tell these dudes that you like what they're doing, that they're doing some great things. It's going to take you, Sugar Ray, to reach out to an Errol Spence Jr. and talk to him. And like, you know what? Tell these young guys that they're doing stuff, that they're doing stuff the right way. Tell these young guys that they're on the right track. Errol Spence Jr. grew up admiring Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray don't act like he ain't really doing, like, acting like, a lot of these other fighters acting like, the boxers of today ain't really making no noise. They ain't all of that and all of that. A lot of them do that. That's not cool for the sport. And I understand I always say this too, because the boxing fans of today are all older men, guys of older demographics, 40s, 50s, late 30s. You know what I mean? It's hardly anybody in my age group. I mean, it is people in my age group, but the demographic, boxing's young demographic, 25 and older, is like, it's not good. Only the old boxing fans are really clinging to the sport. And you're going to need young people to keep the sport going once older generations pass on. If the younger generation, the younger crowd is not into the sport, unfortunately, it's going to die off, especially when I would hate for this sport that I love so much to be at risk of dying off. But when you got UFC and all this stuff out here, yeah, man, boxing got to compete with that. But when the legends acting like the young dudes ain't shit and, Sugar Ray don't want to act like, acknowledge the young dudes like Errol Spence and all of that, and that's a problem. Now, I know they still got this boxing bravado in them and all of that, but you got to let that go. Help to advance the sport. I don't know if it's because a lot of it, I saw people say this. They say that because the fighters today are divas. You guys just want to be paid. Y'all don't want to take y'all don't want to take big fights. Y'all just want to get paid. Even the boxers of yesteryear, they fought all the big fights. Yeah, they got robbed, but hey, so what? They still came out in there and made a legacy and all that. Listen. Y'all think it's cool to be out there trying to make a legacy, getting your head wrong every single night, and you out here getting robbed blind? That ain't cool. That's not cool, man. Look at Motor City Cobra, man. Look at Tommy Hearns out here. Tommy Hearns punch drunk as ever. Was in all them legendary fights. And I'm hoping that Tommy Hearns' money is good, but I'm sure he got ripped off. I'm sure he got his pockets ripped off. Mike Tyson got his pockets ripped off. You know what I mean? And all that. Oh, in the 80s and 90s, we did this and did that. Man, stop it, man. These young boys, yeah, there are some young guys that aren't fighting, but it's some exciting fights that are taking place, man, in the sport. Canelo and Triple G. Jermell Charlo just fought Sergey Deverenchenko, which was exciting. Jermell Charlo just fought Jason Rosario and had a unification fight. Errol Spence is about to fight Danny Garcia. Before that, he fought a tough fight with Sean Porter. Before that, he fought a hell of a matchup with Mikey Garcia. And I don't care what y'all want to talk about. Oh, Errol fought a dude way out of his weight class. Cut it out, because Mikey's called him out. Mikey called Errol out. And before then, you had even boxing legends like Sugar Ray Leonard saying that Mikey was going to beat Errol Spence, right? So it was a 50-50 fight before Errol obliterated him and showed that he separated himself. So it was a 50-50 fight, and it was a fight that a lot of people paid for and wanted to see. Keith Thurman fight Manny Pacquiao. Errol Spence want to fight Manny Pacquiao, so on and so forth. These young dudes out here fighting Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. These dudes out here fighting, they got exciting fights too. They just want to get paid as they should. They should be paid handsomely for what they do, man. Cause guess what? The promoters is that yeah they do what they do what they do, but they not the stars. The dudes going in the ring getting their head battered, going into the ring like warriors, coming out with bruises, cuts, and scrapes, and all type of black eyes and all of that. They should be rewarded handsomely for their efforts because they're gladiators and they do something that most men can't do. So yeah, the young boys, they understand business now. We want to get paid top dollar, but these young boys putting on good fights, man. That was a great card that went on this past weekend, man. Jermell, Charlo, Jason Rosario, Errol Spence fighting Danny Garcia coming up next, like Teofimo Lopez, Vasily Lomachenko. You got exciting fights coming up, man. Exciting fights gonna be taking place, and people acting like, oh, you know, this whole back in my day we fought this and that. Back in my day, that back in my day attitude gonna have boxing in obscurity. It's gonna have boxing in obscurity. Y'all gotta cut that out. And I'm telling all y'all fans that keep spewing the rhetoric of the old media, or these young fighters, they don't do it like the boys back in the day. Or these young fighters, they ain't making no noise. These young fighters, they ain't worth nothing. They ain't worth nothing. They ain't doing nothing. Guess what? When y'all keep telling the world these young fighters ain't doing nothing, the world is going to stop watching boxing. Only people that's going to be left is hardcore boxing fans who were raised in the sport. And no sport can just thrive off just the hardcore fans. You need new fans coming each and every day. I'm going to be real with y'all. Only reason people knew who Deontay Wilder was with you know, him knocking everybody out and having exciting knockouts with exciting fight with King Kong Ortiz and all of that. The first fight was super exciting. Only reason people knew who he was because of that to this day rant when he went off and he snapped and he's telling the history of was talking about the history of the plight of African American people in this country. Before he did that, nobody was really tuned in. You know what I mean? And a part of that is older champions refuse to endorse him. James Toney talking shit on the young dude. Like, he'll embrace some dudes, James Toney. I love James Toney. One of my favorite fighters. Talking like, oh, Errol Spence ain't this and that. And, all that. Like, yeah, you can say you feel like a person got to prove themselves and all of that. But James Toney them be acting like, Errol Spence and Deontay Wilder, these dudes ain't shit and all of that. Okay, James. Okay. All right. Yet you want to still come around. You going to want to still come around and make money off boxing and all of that at these events and all this type of stuff. You ain't going to have no events to go to and make no bread off of, as you should be able to do. If you keep talking like that about the fighters, boxing going to be blasted away into oblivion. Ain't nobody going to be watching it because the young generation don't know who the hell these dudes are. They don't know because boxing ain't promoted like it was back then, and it becomes affected worse when the older generation don't endorse the new talent. I salute Evander Holyfield because he be out here rocking with the young talent. He rocking with Deontay Wilder and the young dudes out here fighting. He show respect to him and he say he like what they doing. He like their abilities, so on and so forth. And you got other guys that do it as well. You know what I'm saying? But Lennox Lewis and so on and so forth. But you got other dudes that acting like, oh, these dudes ain't shit and these young boys ain't on my level. These young boys ain't doing nothing today and so on and so forth. The sport of boxing ain't gonna die if you do that. They do a disservice to the sport tremendously when they talk about the talent in that way. Come on, man. There's a common sense. If Mike Tyson saying ain't nobody doing shit in boxing, the heavyweight scene trash, and this heavyweight bad, and this dude, if he talking like that, the heavyweight champion, he ain't nothing, ain't nobody gonna run to the sport. With all the clout Mike Tyson got, people listen to him when he talk. Because a lot of people feel like he the best heavyweight to ever fight. Which I don't think is true, but Mike Tyson is one of them though, for sure. But yeah, man, like if Mike Tyson saying the dude, the heavyweight champion ain't nothing, he ain't shit, ain't nobody finna watch boxing. It's gonna be messed up, man. I think Deontay Wilder sold that fight, even if it was a great fight on paper. But people started clamoring to that fight and really found out who Deontay Wilder was with the build-up of it when they saw Deontay Wilder go viral for the to this day situation. For real. Outside of that, I think it was really the main boxing's core audience was watching that fight already. The boxing's non-core audience, the casual fans, got sucked in when they saw Deontay Wilder do the till this day rant. For real, man. Boxing legends got to cut it out, man. I know, y'all didn't make a lot of money. Y'all was robbed, and the young dudes getting paid handsomely and so on and so forth. But be happy for them young brothers, man. They deserve that bread, man. And then shoot, if you speak life into them, boxing will stay around, and there will be more opportunities for you to come around and make guest appearances and get paid handsomely. It's a shame how these dudes was ripped off back in the day. They did all that fighting and all them classic wars and all of that, and they didn't get paid the way they should be. Their pockets are hurting. And they punch drunk and can barely talk and stand up. Something that Floyd Mayweather even talked about in the past. They come into the Hall of Fame events and all of that, and they punch drunk and can't even speak well. After them wars and attrition, people saluted them for all the wars and was robbing them blind. I bet you right now they could say they wish they got paid. They wish they would have had their money intact. Now, I agree with this. The fighters do need to fight big fights. They do need to take the big fights to keep the sport relevant and alive and keep it flourishing. They need to take the big fights that people want to see so that, people will just clamor to it and be like, okay, I can do this boxing thing. That was a great fight, a hell of a fight. I want to come more often. The casual fan will say that when the fighters make the big fights. But these dudes going to fight each other, man. Everybody acting like ain't nobody fighting nobody and everybody just ain't fighting. Man, these dudes is fighting. They fighting each other. A lot of these fights finna go down and shake as we speak. But it hurts the sport when all these dudes out here the legends talk down on today's fighters and don't endorse them. And when the fans don't endorse them and they attach themselves to the old head rhetoric, the legends rhetoric, it hurts boxing. It hurts boxing too. Cut it out.